Hey everyone, Dominic here with the Raveing Hordes Game Club in Saskatoon. Today we've got round 2 of a local tournament I put together here, the March to War tournament. Right now we've got Infernal Dwarves versus the Dread Elves. The second scenario I had the guys play was Frontline Clash with the Spoils of War secondary. Let's get right into this one. So here's the look at deployment for Infernal Dwarves. He's got a Bound Demon Titan Mortar, an organ gun or volley gun. Right next to that is the Infernal Guard, I believe, and he's got his character general in there. Beside that is the Immortals with a BSB. Next to them, he's got the Citadel Guard with some flintlock axes, a brick of slave orcs, a giant with the slave upgrades and the whip. Behind that, he's got his Master Wizard on a Temple Lamassu, another unit of slave orcs, and a unit of Disciples of Lugar beside him. Here are the spells for the Infernal Dwarves. So take a look. For the Dread Elves, over here he's got a unit of Dread Spears with a Captain who is a General, Reaper Bolt Thrower beside, another unit of Dread Spears, a Kraken, a big unit of Tower Guard with an Assassin and a Captain BSB. Behind that, he's got another Bolt Thrower there and another Kraken beside. On the hill there, he's got a unit of, I guess, Cold One Riders, Raptor Riders, I think they're in now, and 2 Raptor Chariots. And then on the far beside that, he's got 2 units of Dark Riders. They do Vanguard up a little bit, and then Infernal Dwarves roll and get first turn. So here's what the table is looking like before the game starts, and here's the turn 1 movement for the Infernal Dwarves. So not a lot of movement really. He goes right into magic pretty much. Into the magic phase, he casts Pentagram of Pain on that far unit of Dark Riders. It goes off, they suffer some wounds, fail their panic check, and flee right off the board. Then he went and did Marked for Doom, which I believe was dispelled. And then he did something else there. Oh no, he Marked for Doom, it wasn't the Marked for Doom. Marked for Doom was dispelled, but he cast Grave Calls. And miscast on a 2/2/2, but it still went off. Killed some of the second Dark Raiders, but they stick. Yep, just like that. Into the shooting phase, he puts 2 wounds on a Bolt Thrower, and the mortar missed. So that's it for Infernal Dwarves turn 1. Into turn 1 for the Dread Elves. So those Raiders move up into the center there. Everything else slowly shimmies a bit. Not a whole lot of movement there first turn. I forget what I was taking a picture of here. But yeah, so there's not really a whole lot. He's got no magic. He's got a bit of shooting. Which didn't do. I don't think he did a single wound to anything actually. So yeah, he shot at the giant. He missed it with the Bolt Throwers, and those Dark Riders tried to shoot but didn't cause any wounds to the Slave Orcs. So we're right into turn 2 for the Infernal Dwarves. It's kind of a little bit faster here. So the Slave Orcs go into the front, stand and shoot. I think he might have killed 2. And then the Disciples come into the flank, and they hold. So there's that charge. Then right into magic. Pretty much there was a very, very slight amount of maneuvering on the Infernal Dwarves side, so not a lot happened. Into magic. He did Mark for Doom on the chariot, but only rolled 1 for the wound. He did the grave calls, and he sacrificed some orcs, but it was dispelled. And that was pretty much it for magic that did anything. Shooting phase, he goes in, shoots the mortar at the spear block. It hit, it killed 5. And then he shot at the volley gun, or shot the volley gun with, shot at the bolt thrower, sorry, with the volley gun. He killed the bolt thrower, and that center unit of spears actually panic and flee off the table. So there's the hit on those guys, the thing disappearing, and the flee off the table. So yeah, the flintlock axes shot at the Kraken, didn't cause any wounds, and then into combat. So over here, the Dark Riders, I think they actually did kill 2 in the, not from the sound shoot, but in the combat they killed 2 slave orcs, but they died, and both those units pivot on the spot, like so. And that's it for turn 2 for Infernal Dwarves. So Dread Elves turn 2. So he goes ahead and he declares a triple charge, actually. The chariots and the cav there all go into the disciples. One of his krakens goes into the slave orcs who flee. And I think that was pretty much it. Oh no, this the other kraken there declared a long charge against those flintlock axes. Stand shot didn't, I don't think he caused a wound, but maybe 1. But so there's all those charges. The flee, that charge, and oh, they failed their panic or their terror check, even with the reroll there. That's what happened there. So they ran just in front of that impassable terrain, and all of these charges make it in. So he moves up the rest of his stuff there to match the failed charges, and that's pretty much it for their go here. He shoots his bolt thrower, causes 3 wounds to the volley gun. In combat, he starts to do some work with impact, starts to do some more, and kills him down to 3 guys at the end without suffering a single wound to any of it. So the Dread Elves just about managed to clear that whole unit in 1 round. The Far Chariot is clear of the combat, and he's bounced away. And that's kind of what we're looking like going into turn 3 already for the Infernal Dwarves. So Infernal Dwarves turn 3. That giant declares a charge on the front, and those slave orcs right here declare a charge on the flank. The giant makes it, the slave orcs fail. The other slave orcs continue to flee, but not off the board. He slowly moves up, remembering that infantry don't really like water too terribly much, so he's slowly advancing. Over here, his prophet on the Lamassu is making sure to stay out of bolt thrower line of sight. And then he goes into magic phase. So this round, he goes and does, let's see here, he did, trying to see what he did. He did Mark for Doom on this Kraken here, caused 2 wounds to that Kraken. And then he did Pentagram of Pain, but failed his casting roll. He did the Grave Calls on the chariot that's by itself now, and that one was dispelled, and then goes right into shooting after that. So there's the wounds, and here's a shot. I think he shot this time at the tower guard, but didn't cause any wounds. And then the Titan mortar shoots at the Dread Elf, the Dread Spears across the table. Hits, kills 7, and unfortunately they fail their panic test and they run off the board. Into combat over here, he only kills 2 of the disciples, so there's still 1 left there, but he does quite a bit of damage to that giant. So 5 wounds to the giant. The giant breaks and flees, but because that disciple's still there all by himself, holds those 2 units in place. And that's kind of what the table is looking like going into Dread Elves turn 3, I guess. So into Dread Elves turn 3, the Kraken declares a charge, I believe, against the giant, who has to continue to flee. No, I think he went into the orcs. The chariot charges the giant. One of the chariots that's back over here charges the giant. The Kraken charges these orcs, and the other Kraken charges those Citadel Guard who did rally on the last turn. The stand and shoot causes a wound, and there's shooting I don't think did anything, and then it goes right into combat. So there's the charges. The second Kraken did fail. It's looking pretty... He counts down, so he does only have 1 wound on it. This one, the chariot, actually failed the charge, and then in combat, the Raptors finish off that last disciple. Over here, the Kraken causes a bunch of wounds, and they stick. So that's kind of what the table is looking like going into turn 4 for the Infernal Dwarves. So Infernal Dwarves, turn 4. The giant rally, those slaves rally, and I mean pretty much everything else is just shimmying on the spot. So right into magic. So for magic, he does Mark for Doom on the Kraken, causes 3 wounds. He did Pentagram of Pain in an aura, and he sacrificed on an orc to try and gain wounds back if he caused wounds, but it was dispelled. And then he did the Grave Calls, and he gets a 6/6/6 miscast. Only causes 1 wound to that knight unit with the Grave Calls, and from the miscast he ended up suffering 2 to himself. So into the shooting phase, that volley gun opens up again, trying to shoot at the tower guard. I do believe he caused a few wounds this time, maybe 2, not very much. He's not rolling very high with the hits, and that's pretty much it for shooting. The mortar was out of line of sight, and the flintlock axes, I think they did 1 wound to the tower guard as well. So into combat, the Kraken goes ahead, tears these guys apart, makes them flee, and that's all the combat they had on turn 4. So as you can see, that's what the board is shaping up as we go into Dread Elves turn 4. So Dread Elves turn 4, that Kraken charges the fleeing orcs. They flee off the table. He tests a redirect into the flank of the Citadel Guard that are just off the screen. He fails his check even with the reroll, so he's just going straight forward. The second Kraken over here going to his Immortals because he doesn't want to take the stand and shoot with only 1 wound left. This chariot declares a charge against the giant, and that's it for charges. So there's that. This guy makes it in. This guy fails, obviously, because there's nobody there, and this chariot failed its roll as well, which gums up this whole area for him. So that's pretty much it. As he goes, he tried to shoot at that Temple Lamassu as well, and missed. So into combat, the Kraken throws all of its attacks against the BSB in that block of Immortals here. Hits 3 times, wounds 3 times, no armor save, and then rolls 3 5-up saves to save that BSB's life. It was a really, really lucky roll there. I know Sam couldn't quite believe it there, but that's dice for you. So they do manage to kill put the last wound on that Kraken. He dies. They kind of just stay where they are. And we're going into turn 5 now for the Infernal Dwarves. So that's kind of how things are shaping up. So for charges, the giant over here charges the chariot. And I think that was pretty much it for charges, actually. Oh, the slave orcs tried to declare a charge against the flank of the Kraken, but failed to... No, I think they made that charge. I think that was moving it mid-play. So, into the magic phase. Again, that was magic. He does the Aura Pentagram of Pain again, sacrifices a wound to gain a wound back. This time it does go off, but he only managed to cause 1 wound, so just barely did he manage to do it. Gets 1 of his wounds back. He did Marked for Doom, and he failed the casting roll, and then he tried to cast the Grave Calls on those knights again, and that was dispelled. I go into shooting, shoots at that tower guard, kills 3, I believe, and then he goes right into combat. So, oh wait, he did a breath weapon here too. The Lamassu did a breath weapon, caused a single wound to the knights. The giant in combat kills the first chariot, overruns into the second one, and over here backfires, doesn't manage to kill the Kraken, and breaks and flees, leaving the Kraken to pivot on the spot there and face the flank of the Citadel Guard. So that's how things are looking. And now we're into turn 5 for the Dread Elves. So Dread Elves, turn 5. That Kraken goes into the flank. The Tower Guard pick up the token and then slide sideways. And I think that's pretty much it. There, the Knights kind of shimmy up a little bit. Shooting didn't do anything. Combat, the chariot wins, kills the giant, and I think he pivots on the spot there a little bit. Over here, the Kraken kills a few, and they break, catches him. He overruns into the flank of the Immortals. So that's what the battlefield's looking like going into turn 6, I believe now. So turn 6 for the Infernal Dwarves. Again, he doesn't have too much. The rest of his army is kind of moving up a little bit. Goes into magic phase. He tries to do... Let's see what he did this time. Last magic phase, he does Pentagram of Pain in an aura again. Didn't cause any wounds. He did the Grave Calls on the Knights. He did kill 1. He did shooting at the Tower Guard, only killed 1 with that volley gun. And then he goes into turn 6. The Immortals finish off the last wound on the Kraken, only suffering 1, which that's where that wound came from for Dawn and Sam, if you guys are watching. That's where that wound came from. We were looking back on that. And then into turn 6 for the Dread Elves. So the Tower Guard declare a long charge. They need an 11, and they make it. It was an 11 on the dice, that is. So yeah, they made it in. Goes into shooting, and you can see that Temple Lamassu is missing. Rolls to hit, wounds, doesn't make his save, and gets plucked off the field. In the combat was actually pretty lackluster for the Tower Guard. They did manage to kill 4. As I said just a minute ago, that 1 wound had been caused by the Kraken. We were pretty sure that's how it happened, but we weren't sure at this point. The Immortals actually win combat, but the Tower Guard stick on their stubborn check, and that's where we end the game. So there's not actually a lot left there. It was a pretty fun game. There's a lot of moments and a lot of still learning here as both guys are still trying to figure out their armies and kind of a few new things, but fun nonetheless. Final score there was a 11-9 for the Dread Elves. So pretty tight match. Again, this was round 2 of our March to War tournament. Up next is round 3. Stay tuned.